Hello, I'm Jerry Hacks and welcome to the How to Make Chrome Extension video tutorial series. In this video, we're going to talk about how to handle input events and do very basic input validation. We'll learn how to listen for events on inputs and buttons, most notably the on-click event listener. We'll get data from our inputs by listening to a unique identifier attached to them. And finally, we'll do some very basic validation on the inputs. Let's get started. We have a nicely styled pop-up HTML window. Now we need a way to uniquely identify our inputs, dropdowns, and buttons. A great way of doing that is by attaching the ID attribute on any element you want to. We need to add an ID for our dropdown, our start and end dates, and for our save and stop buttons. I'll add an ID of location ID. For the start date input, I will add an ID of start date. For the end date, I'll add an ID of end date. For the save and start button, I'll add an ID of start button. And for the stop button, I'll add an ID of stop button. We have all of our IDs set up. Let's move over to the popup.js file to start listening to input events. Come over here to the popup folder, create a new file, and call it popup.js. Inside of here, we have to declare a couple of variables so that we can attach listeners to the states of certain elements. In our case, the elements we care about are the inputs and the buttons that we declared an ID on previously. Let's make a comment here for elements, and I'll call my first location ID element a location ID element. Pretty descriptive. I'll then do document.getElement by ID, and then I'll specify the ID that I used on the location ID input. So as you can tell, there is a location ID here. On the select, I attached a location ID. Now to prove this to you, I'm going to go back to the Chrome window, do refresh, open the Chrome extension window, and hit inspect. I did a right-click inspect there. Come over here to console. And inside of here, you can still get access to the document. Write document.getElement by ID, and if you enter location ID, you'll notice that it returns the select to you immediately. So that's essentially what we're doing here. We're using this same kind of code in our own JavaScript file so we can take advantage of the browser's ability to read the elements on the page. Let's hop back over to our code. Now let's create variables for the other elements on the page. The next will be the start date. Document.getElement by ID, start date. Then we want the end date. Next, let's look at the buttons. We need the start button, and I'll do the same thing here. Duplicate this, and this will be the stop button. We have our variables set up. Now we need to start listening for events on the buttons themselves. The method that we're going to use to do this is the on-click event handler. It's as simple as doing a start button dot on click. We make that equal to a function, and inside of here we do a console log of you clicked the start button. This console log will be useful for when we test using the Chrome dev tool. Now let's do the same thing for the stop button. I'm going to duplicate this, paste it down here, and write stop button. Change the console log text. Stop button. Now that we have that complete, let's hop back over to our Chrome extension page. Right-click inspect, hop over to console, and let's try it out. But we don't see anything. And the reason this is happening is because we never included the popup.js file. So let's hop back over to our code, go to popup.html. At the end of the closing body tag, right beneath it, but right above the closing HTML tag, we'll write a script tag with a source of popup.js, and then we'll close it. This just means that we are now including the popup.js as part of this HTML file. It's now going to be a package along with the CSS we included above here. Since popup.js is in the same folder, it's just the path itself. If we hop back over to the Chrome extension window, hit refresh again, with our inspect tool open, we see it working. But how do I get the data from the inputs themselves? Let's say I want to print this out right here into the console log. How do I do that? We can accomplish that by just printing out the value whenever we hit one of the save or stop buttons. I'm going to remove this you click the start button console log, and instead I'm going to print out the value of the start date element. Start date, comma, start date element dot value. Doing the dot value will give us the current inputted value of the date element. Let's do the same thing for the end date element, this time on the stop button. End date, comma, end date element, value. When the input is empty, we just get an empty string. If we were to enter something in here, like December 30th, and hit the button, we get this printed out. Let's try it for the end date. 23/01/20. What happens if we enter our own data? It works. We have the input set up and we have the button set up, but let's add a little bit of test data for the location dropdown. Back in the popup.html code, I'm going to create two options. An option is just a value in the drop-down list. Option 1 will be Los Angeles, and that will have a value of Los Angeles. Option 2 will be Seattle, and that will have a value of Seattle. Now you'll notice that Los Angeles is selected, and we have Seattle selected as well. But if we want to print it out, let's go back to our start button onClick method and write location ID, and we will now get the location ID elements value. And this will be the value that we use as part of our option tags here. Los Angeles is selected, hit save and start, and the location ID comes up as Los Angeles. If we switch it over to Seattle, it comes back as Seattle. We have our input set up, we have our onClick methods working, and we're getting the value correctly. The last bit of logic we need. Now, this is not the only validation we're going to do. There's a lot more coming, but for this tutorial video, we're going to add a check to see if the value is not null or not undefined. One way of validating an input in JavaScript is by simply using a truthy statement. We can do this by writing if the input that we're concerned about, in our case, we're looking at the start date element's value. This checks if the value is undefined, null, an empty string, or not a number. A variety of checks are done on this value to confirm that it's something valid. In our purposes, this works beautifully because it's exactly what we need. We need to check if the string is empty, or if it's null or undefined, or any other kind of invalid states. Let's go ahead and try this out by printing out proof that this is working. I'll write out a console log in the if statement. This is the value of the start date element I'm printing out if it's correct. If it's not correct, I'm going to run an else statement with another console log. Let's give this a run. I'm back in my extension window. I hit save and start. Start date is invalid. And that makes sense because we have nothing in the start date widget. But if I select a date, the start date comes back. Now, this is not doing any kind of date validation to check if it's a correct format, or if the start date is less than the end date. It's just checking the value in a normal programmatic fashion. And there you have it. You have a functioning pop-up window with a pop-up JavaScript file that's listening to the input events and listening to button click events. You're able to get the value of inputs, and you're able to console log them out to the screen so that you can prove it to yourself. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe so I know to make more of these. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Jerry.